Good morning and welcome. My name is Teresa Campbell, and you have joined today's PIM and PIA Mid-America Financial Executive Council Roundtable discussion. Note that all of our attendees are placed in mute mode to ensure a quality recording, which will be provided to all of our members. We encourage comments and questions during the program. We want you to type them in the Q&A field or the chat field at the bottom of your screen, and we'll ask them at the most appropriate time. The Financial Executives Council is coordinated by leaders in both the North Central and South Central regions of the U.S. They guide the programs and content offered 6 times per year, and the focus is on financial reporting and compliance, data management and security, and financial policies and planning. Our council co-chairs are Carl Nathy with Myers Printing, Ryan Wagner with Action Mailing and Printing, Matt Wills with LB Carlson, and Ken Rain with Daily Printing. Ken, take us into introductions of our panelists.
Thank you very much, Teresa. I'd like to welcome everybody to our discussion today, and especially I'd like to welcome and introduce our panelists. We have Mike Snyder representing R.R. Donnelly. He is based in Minnesota. We've got Justin Fikert. He is representing Mid-States Group. They are based in South Dakota. We've got Steve Carter with Sun Graphics, and he's based in Kansas. And we've got Patrick McLean. He is based in, he's with Amarillo Speed Print in Texas. So we've got a pretty good representation of the whole central part of the U.S. region. So I think we should have some pretty good insight and discussion. So with that being said, I'd like to jump right into our discussion. And we're going to jump in, starting with managing higher costs. And these are a few of the things we brainstormed in our planning. And I'm going to let Mike kick it off here with his insight.
Good morning. Well, thank you for the opportunity. So a lot of what I say is probably not rocket science to most of us on the call. However, sometimes we just get a little caught up in our own, I'll call it the weeds, where we're not being as proactive as we should be with managing our costs. And for those of us in the commercial printing market, of which my plant is, one of our biggest costs, of course, is labor, but you also have materials and freight. And so what we do is we always are looking ahead to make sure that if our schedules are getting a little light, we are either scheduling preventive maintenance and or we are taking some downtime if necessary. Fortunately, our teams are open to those ideas and those ways that we're managing costs in the facility. But one thing that gets overlooked sometimes with managing higher costs is how you can control your revenues. And by that, I mean margins. We've done a good job here of controlling our margins and the work that we take in the facility. And we have to balance it delicately with making sure we're running our assets, but also making sure we're making money along the way. So the old adage that you used to hear of make it up with volumes, maybe not is the answer. And you have to take a look at that. So you've got the two levers. You got the cost lever or you've got the revenue lever. And you have to make sure that you're balancing both of those very diplomatically, of course, with your workforce, but making sure that you're doing it for the bottom line. Also, keep an eye on your ancillary costs. Right now, we've got tariffs that others are going to speak about on this call later, but there are tariff implications on metal or aluminum. And our plates, at least in the offset printing market, are made of aluminum and metal. And so if those tariffs happen, it may affect our costs, which, of course, we have to be prudent and pass along to our customers. So I just want to kind of open up the conversation. I hope that this elicits more comments from the others on the panel and or from the group.
Well, welcome everyone. I'm Justin. One of the things that I was thinking about when it to the cost of borrowing and the financial impacts is just I'm really encouraging my team to do a lot better job than we have in the past on the ROI side of things. So, you got to have contingencies, kind of what's the worst thing that can happen if we make this purchase or this investment and really do a deep dive into the ROI side of things. We're not a large company. We have a few hundred employees, but we don't have an entire department working on ROIs. So it's kind of goes back to the accounting department, the ownership, what is it going to cost us? What is the return on our investment with the interest rates? You got to look a little bit into the future as far as your balloon payments, things like that, and just kind of plan out, just do a better job of strategic planning for your financial budget than you probably have in the past because of the uncertainty. And then jumping into a little bit of the postal increase and the volume discounts, there's a lot of talk going on right now at the post office with what the rates are going to do. I think people are hearing 10 to 12% increases on a lot of the different mail sortations. So we're talking about taking away NDC discounts, which is the National Distribution Centers, and kind of bypassing those and going to the SCF. So that's going to cause a lot of questions, and how is this going to work, and how are we going to get discounts to make it worth putting the mail into the stream further. So that is not in stone yet, of course. So we're really, everybody's kind of on their edge of their seat looking at what's going to happen with this. But what my advice is on that is just give your customer options, which puts pressure on the sales team and the estimating teams. So probably give them a heads up that if costs do rise that much, what is your customer going to want for a plan B, a plan C? That goes right along into tariffs as well with, a lot of the SCA papers, the number 4s, the number 5s, those are only made in Canada. So if you have a lot of customers that are running on those paper stocks, what's the plan? What's the options? Talk about it now. And of course, we're right in the middle of this. So it's just a lot of the what if game, try to remain calm and actually see what happens before just hitting the fire drill button. But I think getting in front of those customers, talking them through, okay, if this happens, here's what we can do for you. Just being a solutions provider, I think is the answer. And then we're all in the same boat together. So I guess we just got to all work together and see how we can make the best of it.
Yeah, one thing I would add to what Justin said is when you're looking at your billing, you're giving your customer a certain amount of days in the terms. But if you let that invoice take 4, 5, 6 days to get out to your customer, you're giving them free financing, and that may affect your cash flow, your working capital, and your ability to take discounts.
There is a question in the chat, and they want to know if the panelists feel like labor costs are out of line in your markets versus other professions.
Well, I just went through a process here because we really didn't have any type of pay scales, and just so everybody knows, we're in a rural market, but still, we're facing competition from the local companies and whatnot. But the PIA does a wage survey every year, breaks that down into company size and the markets, and that's really the guideposts that I'm using to try and make sure we're competitive and a fair wage and all that.
Steve, sometimes when you get that, wage survey back, do you have to make some concessions or accommodations for someone that you feel is really good? And all the other panelists too. I mean, you try to keep everything as confidential as you can on the pay scale, but sometimes you just got to pay people that you want to retain.
Yeah, there's you've got the stars in the plant. I've heard it said that 20% of your workforce carries the operation, and the rest of them just come along for the ride. We really have maybe 20% that are fully engaged, I guess is one way to put it. And you've got to take care of those because they're the core of your operation. I mean, at the end of the day, anybody can buy the same equipment. It's the people that are going to make the difference.
It's funny that you reference the 80-20 rule, Steve, because that seems to come into play so often in both life and in business. And you're absolutely right. So to answer your question about the labor market rates, we have had to make some adjustments, and I think it was the right thing to do. When I came on board a few years ago, I've worked with Donnelly for a long time, but I haven't worked for Donnelly. And I've noticed that some of our positions were out of whack as compared to where our market is and or from the information as provided by the wages survey. So yes, we've made some adjustments based off that. And today's workforce is a little different too. I've been in the industry longer than I should probably admit, but it used to be taboo to talk about your pay or your salary, and now they share it. And so you have to make sure you're being consistent and and take care of those star performers like Steve mentioned.
Yeah, it's a little off topic, but when you're talking about your workforce, I was at a local Chamber of Commerce meeting and they were talking about retention and things like that. And they said the number one thing that the young generation wants today that they're looking for in a job is friends.
Social connection.
Yes.
We're in a little bit of an interesting, we don't have any competition even close that's like a high volume web printing plant because we're in Aberdeen, South Dakota. So we end up competing against the HVAC, welders, some other heavy duty industry type work. And they're driving around with vans that say, starting wage $35 an hour, no training, no experience. And so we run into some of that type of competition. And then I would say, just being totally honest, from an equity perspective internally, if it takes, somebody might not even apply if you're not in our world, in South Dakota, offering, let's just say $18 to $20 an hour. Well, you might have some people that aren't even making $18 or $20 an hour, and now you're trying to recruit somebody new. So that creates an equity issue amongst your staff, which is, we all know, is not a good thing. And so we've had to do a lot of looking and adjusting of wages to try to make that right size for the new people coming on. And then, like we've talked about, your people that have been loyal and have been with you for a number of years, they don't want to see that gap closing. They want to make sure that they're staying above what the new people are making. So it becomes a challenge for how much can you charge per hour and how efficient are they and how long do they take to train them. You're kind of almost prepaying them for the wage before they're even doing it, but that's really what it boils down to. That's what we found, is that you almost have to pay them as if they were a fully trained operator to get them in the door, and then cross your fingers and hope they stick around and they actually can perform the way you need them to be profitable.
Patrick, you said something very similar in the chat as it relates to other professions that Justin mentioned. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so what I was driving at was, in other professions that we see here, much like was mentioned earlier, HVAC and other tradesmen, we find that even our experienced workers that we currently have are leaving to go to other fields because they can receive better pay in a different field. We had a master printer who had been in the printing industry for over 30 years, and he left and went to work as an electrician because he found that he could make more money, provide better for his family, and had more opportunity for growth, for increased pay, cost of living wages, and so forth. And so he decided to choose that as his second half of his career. Later in life, I mean, he was close to 45 when he decided to take on a new career, but he made that decision. I think each employee will have to make their decision for what's best for them, but we find that we need to be more competitive for our workers, especially for talented workers and experienced workers, to be able to retain them longer for our businesses.
Can I ask the four panelists here about training opportunities in your area? I know in the Twin Cities, they used to have a school, Dunwoody. It was a college where they would train people in the printing arts. They've discontinued that program. Over in Wisconsin, they had the printing program. They've just ceased it, but now they're trying to revitalize it. In the Kansas area, South Dakota, Texas, do you guys have any places that train individuals in the printing, industry?
We do not in South Dakota. And we have some very good tech schools, and there's programs where, you know, you take, like the wind blade manufacturers, for example, they will actually pay for part of your schooling, and then you sign a contract to work for them for, let's say, 3 years. And this could be a mechanic, HVAC, welding, construction. So there's like every other industry but printing. And so what we did, and I don't know what everybody's states have, but there's an apprentice program that the state of South Dakota did where it's an on-the-job training, and you follow it. You essentially have to get it approved through them. And then it's the equivalent of a 2-year degree once they go through the apprentice program, but they're earning and learning at the same time. So we've started that, and that's a nationally recognized program through the Department of Labor that rolls up to the federal department. So I'm guessing that other states have this as well. And that, for us, that's been, you know, we have only had a few people go through it, but that's definitely an opportunity I would look into. Because if you go and do a program where, you know, if you go to 4 years of school, you're going to have debt, most likely. If you go to a 2-year tech school, you're going to have to commit to 3 years of working for the company that helped pay for it. And again, we tried to put in some, you know, we didn't want to go through all the training of the staff member and then turn around and they leave right away, but they're also working. So we're getting something out of it. They're getting something out of it. So I would encourage everyone to look into what your Department of Labor in your state has for an apprentice program where they're learning and earning at your organization.
For the Kansas area where we're located, being rural, we really have limited resources. The local high schools, they had a printing program. It's gone now. We do have Pittsburgh State, which is about 30 to 40 minutes away, which has a graphics program. But they do seem to, at least the students seem to steer more towards the pre-press or design side, the creative side, and the production side doesn't seem to be real appealing.
I can speak to that also. WT here has a graphics program, West Texas A&M, and Texas Tech also has a graphics program, but they do not focus on print or hands-on. The programs are geared towards social media design and website design, and we do not have any internship. And what's odd is both Texas Tech and WT have print shops on site at their facilities.
Panelists, I have asked Tim Wilson to join us. We've talked about labor costs. Let's switch and talk about material costs. Oftentimes, when those material costs go up, we know that our customers have a budget, so they'll print less, and those material costs are cutting into your profitability. There's a lot of uncertainty there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Teresa. You know, it really is kind of a fluid situation right now with the tariffs. You know, they're on, they're off. I know we had an instance where you know, they were on for a few days and then back off. And in that aspect, you know, you had material coming in, and if it happened to hit in that 4-day window where there was a tariff in place, it got hit by it. So you may have some material on your floor that's not tariffed, and new material that came in that is tariffed, but yet you really can't. You have a hard time passing that on because your competition isn't tariffed because theirs didn't hit that window. So you're eating some of that material there. Some of the manufacturers I know have put out some information now that, you know, the A word, the allocation may be coming into place. I know a European factory has said, you know what, if we're going to ship you a direct container, as of right now, we're not tariffed and we'll be fine. But if we have material in the U.S., we're going on allocation because we're not sure how we're going to be able to keep that pipeline open if tariffs come in place. So that ugly word of allocation's coming in. There's some facilities, you know, that have plants in both Canada and the U.S. Some of them, you know, it depends on how much are we bringing pulp in from Canada and to produce in the U.S. And wood chips. And if we are, how much? You know, there's some, you know, if it's only 10%, they're saying, you know what, it's 10% of our pulp supply, so we're just going to eat it for now and see what happens. But they've also said that if the tariff does come in and stick, they're prepared to move production from Canada to the US from materials that are used in the US, and the materials that they produce in the US and move to Canada, they're going to start producing that in Canada. So they've kind of cross-trained or cross-qualified their machinery in each country to try to circumvent some of that. So again, it's fluid, it changes, constantly. So we're just kind of trying to stay on top of it. And a lot of manufacturers are saying, hey, what we've got on our floor is not tariffed, but as soon as that switch flips, we're gonna have to move. So just be prepared. So that we're just watching that closely between tariffs and allocation and kind of seeing where that goes.
Will you guys talk a little bit about different grades of paper and different types of paper, and some that might be tariffed and others that might not? Are we facing a whole variety of tariffs, or is it just going to be pulp products? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, Justin made a good point, coming out of Canada, your SC grades, your newsprint type stuff, where most of all that comes from Canada. So they're going to get hit. But, as of right now, I think April 2nd is when they're talking about, that's the new delayed time point. But yeah, you're looking at, coated, uncoated, opaques, covers, text, all of it. So.
In my understanding from what some of the memos that we've gotten, or that they're not all getting the full 25% either. Some of the different mills are making their own decisions based on, okay, this grade and this stock is going to be 12.5%, and this one's going to be, we're not going to pass along any of it. And then the next one's the full 25%. So it's really hard to go to a customer and say, well, they're hearing about this, through the news cycle and everything. So they're asking questions like, what's this going to do to my paper? Where's it coming from? And you really don't have a good answer. And so it's just like, well, we're going to take it as it comes, and we'll do plan B and plan C if you'd like us to, or just tell you if it did go up 25%, here's the impact on that particular job, because paper's around, let's just say paper's around 50% of the cost of good on a web job. So it's like, well, okay, we can do some pretty quick math and say, well, this is going to affect your job by $800 per time, every time you run it. Okay, that's not detrimental to the overall budget, so we can probably swallow that. Well, then we had a different one, actual example where it was $8,000 more. Okay, that's a bigger deal. So now what's our options? If you're talking number 4s, number 5s, SCA plus, SCA, kind of the thinner, more directory, or the more like publication type stocks, what's their option? To go to a number 3, which is a much nicer sheet and probably more expensive, or jump to an uncoated and have, a complete change of the look of their product? That's a challenge, for these people that have, you're kind of at the end of the coated universe. Tim can answer this better than I can, but you're kind of, when you get to an SCA, you're kind of down there to, it works for a lot of things, but that's the end of the road for a coated sheet,
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's what I'm seeing too, is people having those discussions of, okay, if that's going to go up and it's going to increase it by 25%, maybe we're better off looking at a lighter weight coated sheet that's domestically produced and avoid the tariff. We're going to pay more for it, but we're not paying the tariff. It's going to be a nicer sheet, and you're going to have to sell your customer on that it's going to look different, and the reason you're doing it. But there's everybody's trying to skin this cat different ways, and I don't know that any of them are wrong. And to your point, as far as all tariffs being at different percentages, I think it's people trying to say, okay, it's going to, let's say it's a 25% tariff. All right, if we have a product that's very low margin, like an SCA, SCB, newsprint type stuff, which is historically low margin products, well, they don't have a choice but to pass it on because they don't have enough margin to eat it. But if you're talking higher end text and covers, where historically the margins are better, they might be able to pass just part of it on and try to keep the customers using their product. Because as you said, if a customer has a budget of X and you come in there and increase their price by 25%, they'll cut down the number of pages. And what we've seen in the last 40 years or so when this stuff has happened, hey, we went from a 68 page down to 34 page, and we just realized, what, we were okay with that. And then it takes several years before you increase the size of that publication again, because they know they can get by with the smaller page count. So now, that you have that residual effect down the road of smaller job sizes.
Teresa, you used to be able to, in our industry, somewhat predict the future based on the history, especially of where the paper manufacturing locations were at with their capacity and their pricing and all of that. But that has changed so much. And the capacity reductions over the last 30, 40 years have been crazy high, and including the last 3 years. In fact, I downloaded some data from RISI this morning, and 6.9 million tons of product in the paper industry has been reduced capacity wise just in the last 4 years. That's, just for everybody's reference, 13.8 billion pounds, or if you want to put those on trucks, 345,000 truckloads of paper. So that capacity is out of the market. So even though operating rates at the mills are still fairly manageable, they're lower. I'd be surprised if the allocation word comes into effect, but I also, because we don't have history right now to draw from, I don't know if I would be surprised. So you have to go off gut feel as well.
I know you guys talked about postal in this, in preparing for this webinar, but that is also a part of those material cost. And so if they're reducing their quantities, like you described an example there, Tim, and postal fees are going up, all of that is cutting into your profitability as well. And how do you counterbalance that?
One of the things that I noticed here, I just received an email today from our software provider for our mailing, and it says that the USPS is proposing to eliminate the NDC and facilities and SCF facility or the SCFs. So that, along with the bound printed matter, those things are going to come to. We're going to know one way or another what's going to happen there comes July. That's the deadline that the Regulatory Postal Commission has been given to make a decision. But in addition to that, there's also, about materials, there's also banding and bundling. Those regulations are changing in May. You'll no longer be able to take flats and bundle them with rubber bands. Now, they have provided an option where certain material based off of your particular entry unit can decide not to bundle certain things. But in the event that, they start saying every single piece has to be strapped now instead of just rubber banded, that will increase costs quite a bit because you'll be looking at equipment to do that. They also mentioned they may want certain items shrink wrapped versus strapped or rubber banded now. So that is another increased cost in labor associated with that. Same things that we discussed earlier, cost versus, what you charge. I got to be diligent about that sort of thing.
For the panelists, there is a comment in the Q&A field that talks about bringing printers together to fight for our industry with paper and postal increases and so forth. I would start that discussion and say your PIA local regional chapters are very active in lobbying for small business and for the printing industry. Most recently, both PIM and PIA Mid-America sent letters to the International Trade Commission related to tariffs. We had some of our counterparts actually testify during those hearings. So we're actively watching it and actively participating in many, many advocacy discussions, all the way from recycling and what's happening there to, we have a couple of states in the union who want to ban carbon black, which is the key ingredient in black ink, which could be very, very horrific. So it's a big education process for our legislature. And because we are a large industry, but with lots of small manufacturers, it's hard to hear that voice. In the comment, they compare us to automotive or the car industry. There's 160 global car manufacturers. Domestically, there's 44,000 print manufacturers. So you have a lot of small voices that are trying to get their message to the top. What are your thoughts from the panelists?
My opinion is that I think, like you just said, Teresa, the PIA and the PIM, and those are the only two organizations I can really speak for. They do an excellent job of giving us a voice collectively. In the state of Minnesota, for sure. I can't speak for South Dakota or the other states, but I do know that our communications that not only they provide to our government officials and our elected officials, but also the advice and guidance they give to us as printers to voice our concerns is always well received, and we always act on it.
Yeah, I would second that, the associations are really the best equipped to carry that message to the government.
I agree. We have, our logistics VP attends the postal forums and the different places to get more educated and try to have influence on what they're talking about doing and how it's going to impact, because, they can make some interesting decisions or different things that they're trying to do. And it's just like, okay, do you understand how that's going to affect us, our customers, the volume of mail, the volume of packages, these things that you're doing have major impacts. So yeah, the more we can band together and link arms and show a force together, the better off we're going to be. So yeah, highly recommend that. And that's one of the things as we go out and try to get new members for the association. It's like, that's a huge part of it, is being a part of something more than just yourself on behalf of the industry.
And when I
Excellent.
talk about our industry, it always re-energizes me as well, because one of the things that we need to make sure that the world understands is that we're using a renewable resource to do what we do. And it's kind of a sarcastic joke, but when I'm giving tours of our facility and seeing people's eyes wide open because they had no idea that we put magic on paper, that's what I call it. I say to them, hey, go plant your iPhone and see how many iPhones grow. We plant more trees. The industry has more trees now than there were 150 years ago. And so what we do is not bad for the environment.
Great comment. Very good. Ken, I know that we have an agenda and we're on a schedule. I'm going to turn it back to you because I think you're going to take us to the next slide.
All right, we're going to flip the script here, and I'm going to tail in a little bit on the embracing AI. Now, you had talked about some of the postal reforms. We've been investigating some of the discounting that they have if you use AI. And so that's something we're discussing here. I'm going to let Justin kick this off and talk about his use of AI in his business and how it is affecting their company.
All right. So, AI is really a hot topic in the last probably 6 months. We've all been using it for a lot longer than that in different ways. But some of the things, just wanted to give some examples of things that we're doing that is definitely helping us. So a lot of you guys are probably using this already, but just the simple meeting plugin that recaps meetings. So like read.ai, it's an invitation and it recaps the whole meeting, pretty much transcribes it. And that's just a really simple thing. If somebody can't make the meeting, or you want to remember what was all said, instead of having to watch an entire video or listen to a recording of it, you have a nice description or a transcription, I should say, of that entire meeting. So I would encourage anybody we're all using Zoom and Teams and all the different online meeting formats. Those are simple plugins that you can put on those. Of course, everybody probably knows about ChatGPT and the other kind of free AI sources. I use this probably almost every day, and this is just saving you time. Basically, you can type anything you want to into ChatGPT, and it's going to give you a pretty good answer on what question you asked it. So if you want to write a survey, a customer survey or an employee survey, you can just put some information in there about your company and say, give me a 10-question survey, and it's going to come up with a pretty good format. You can copy it, edit it, and take it from there. If you're trying to research something, build a strategy for something, it'll help you put together an entire bullet point list of all the things that you should be thinking about researching if you're like looking at a new market or trying to invest in something. It's going to give you some pretty good answers on that. In our sales and CRM software, we actually have it connected to our sales team calling, prospecting. So it'll do analytics on that. It'll tell you how much you talked, how much the customer or prospect talked, how fast you talked. It'll give you suggestions of what to say, what not to say, how to leave a better voicemail. So kind of a lot of analytics. It sounds creepy. It is a little bit creepy, and there are rules, two-party acknowledgments and things like that. So it, depending on what software you're using, it'll help make sure that you're not doing anything illegal. So it'll also help you write marketing materials, emails. It'll help you know when to send an email to someone specifically based on when they open emails and when they're most likely to respond to emails. So again, that's kind of from a marketing perspective. It'll say, hey, send this at 9 o'clock on Tuesday because that's when this person mostly opens and reads their emails. So again, a little creepy, a little big brother, but it's also what everybody else is doing. So we need to be aware of what the tools are that are out there. On the HR side, we use it for helping writing reviews, job descriptions, performance management documentation. It'll give you suggestions as to different videos to watch, books to read. If somebody needs help with, let's say, leadership or follow through or some kind of project management, it'll suggest, hey, this person could benefit from, reading these articles and kind of help you kind of figure out what tools to give them to make them more successful. So my point here with all this is just the operating systems that you're using, probably the newer ones for sure, have AI built right into them. Then there's a million different plugins and subscription-based type AI tools that you can use. So I really encourage everybody to use them to their fullest advantage, and it helps you save time, be automated, and do more with less is what it really can do for you.
Ken, you had a couple of questions for the group.
I did. I'll voice them then. Do any of the panelists have concerns about data security while using AI?
My answer to that is yes. We have to be very careful. And in full disclosure, our company, our Donnelly, had a security breach 3 years ago that was widespread throughout the company. And during that time, we learned a lot of lessons, including IT governance. And so to plug something in, I have to actually go through a lot of, not trouble, but I have to go through a lot of layers to make sure that I can plug something in, having ensured that it passes our IT governance. Old dog, new tricks type of thing. In full disclosure, I struggled with embracing AI, and I didn't really understand it. But to your point, Justin, it's already being used, whether I like it or not. And there have been a few cases where it's asked me, hey, do you want AI to rewrite what you wrote? And I say, sure. And then I read what it wrote, and it doesn't have that personal flavor because there's no emotions behind it. So it's not always applicable, but I think it's already here. So you might as well just run with it.
I hear a lot of things AI is used for, particularly with human resources. Speaking to what Mike said about taking the emotion out of things, a human resources representative with the company may need to remove human emotion out of some of the decisions that are made with regard to employees. And so AI does help a great deal in that area, because then it's not an emotional response coming from the human resources representative. It's just what it is. And I hear that a lot of human resources individuals across many different sectors, not just from our industry, are using AI and ChatGPT a lot to augment what they say, to formulate their scripts, and how to respond whenever there is a volatile situation.
Interesting. There is a comment from one of the attendees that says you can tell AI to sound more like you. My question for the group is, where do you land on policies for this stuff?
That's a great question. I'll just take hopefully like 30 seconds here and talk about something that was really interesting. And you guys have probably seen videos where it's not the person talking, but it's them talking, and you almost can't tell the difference. After a conference I went to, I created a free account, and I did my what they call an avatar. So you essentially read a script off the screen. It's videoing you, your voice, and then once it puts together this avatar, you can then type whatever you want to say, and then it creates a video of you saying what you typed. And it was just, if you knew me, you would know it wasn't real. But if you didn't know me and you just saw this video, you'd be like, this guy is saying this stuff. So that's where I start getting concerned with, with kids in school and really anything, that pretty soon it's going to be hard to tell what's real and what's fake. It already is hard, but it's going to get to the point where it's almost impossible to tell the difference. And that's where I start worrying about, just what's the authenticity of this whole thing that's happening. And yeah, the security, I don't think anybody would want somebody else putting words in their mouth and then having a video out there for everyone to see. So that side of things is the downfall. It's not all roses and butterflies and unicorns. There's definitely a lot of challenges to it as well. So we're just being careful with what we're using it for. We're not going all out with every single different thing you could do with AI. So I think just being calculated about it, taking, I like to ask the question, what's the worst that can happen? So if the worst that can happen is it's going to take down your whole system, and you're going to be held with ransomware or something, that's like, don't do that. But if it's just helping you write a employee review or a better marketing email or things like that, it's like, start using it and encourage your team to use it. Find somebody that's interested in it and say, hey, start giving me some reporting on what you can do with this. And I think that will help you. That will help you be a better company.
Interesting, very interesting. Before we move on, I want to make note of a comment in the Q&A from one of our attendees about the mobile shopping discount from the USPS. And they're saying they used to only be able to use it between August and December, and now they have 6 months out of the year. And for their customer, they could never qualify due to the mailing being in June, but this year they'll get 3% back on postage, which is a significant amount. They're saying $15,000, and that's quite a bit. So definitely looking at the postal discounts is something that the group should consider.
Yes. They have a lot of promotions that they're doing. And definitely there's a lot of good information on the USPS website for that, but that is definitely a good thing to try to take advantage of all those discounts that they are offering. They don't apply to everybody, but the ones that you can get are really good.
Excellent.
That. All right, well, let's switch gears here and let's talk about the industry outlook. And I'm going to let Mike kick off, give us his 2 cents worth on what he thinks.
Well, again, you're right. It's my 2 cents worth. And it's never gospel. It's more of just gut feel and going off of indicators. And the indicators right now are that consumer confidence in the market is actually still pretty strong. And so we can use that to base decisions on whether we're going to add people or add equipment or fix things or make all of our important business decisions. However, due to whether you support it or not, due to the kind of uncertainty right now with where tariffs are and some of the decisions coming out of the White House are, I think business confidence is not quite as strong. And so we've already noticed it with even some of our contractual customers in that they're pulling back the reins a little bit to kind of do a wait and see thing. Fortunately, we're viewing that as a not yet versus a no, but it still is there and it's affecting some of our platforms. Our Donnelly is more than just commercial printing in terms of platforms. And so as a company, we're really looking at that to make sure that we're making the best decisions as we continue to invest in not only our particular plant, but some of the other platforms for our Donnelly.
Interesting. Steve, you had put together kind of a list of threats and opportunities. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts there?
Sure. Well, threats, I mean, you've got the digital substitution, which I think we all went through in the early 2000s as the internet took off. A lot of catalogs transitioned over to internet. But I think the smart marketing companies at least kept some print out there to drive them to the internet. We've already touched on the raw material costs going up. You've got the environmental regulations. Teresa, we've talked about it in some of our meetings where the cradle to grave, we've got that responsibility all the way through the life cycle of the product. Just in general, declining demand for print. The younger generation is more geared towards electronics and the digital media. And some of us are up against all online printers where they're able to aggregate a lot of small orders into a large volume operation. So they get some economies of scale there. We're looking at possible supply chain disruptions that the tariffs may create for us, or in the case of COVID, just in general, the supply chains broke down. And we're all faced with shorter runs and quicker turnaround. I joke with my folks all the time about putting a drive-through window at the end of the building to pick up their orders because it's really quick. And then the labor issues that go with it is threats. So on the other side of the coin, the opportunities are in like personalization and variable data printing. If it's personalized, the return rate on marketing pieces it goes up dramatically. Packaging and labels are big markets. They can replace a catalog with a web page, but you still need a box to put the product in on the shelf, right? Sustainable and eco-friendly printing, the hybrid printing where you may run shells offset and then come back and personalize them digitally, something like that. Large formats of growth area, on-demand and short-run printing. Augmented reality where you put a QR code on the piece that may redirect them to additional materials or interactive websites, things like that. Security printing to avoid counterfeits and things like that. And then just automation, web to print. There's one printer in our association that is very involved in that. And the first time anybody touches it is when the press operator's taking the printed piece out of the end of their digital press. So it's a mature industry, and we've been attacked from a lot of sides, but there's still opportunities if you look for them.
Excellent. Justin, Patrick, your thoughts?
I might sound like a complete repeat of what Steve just said, so he had some really good ideas, but we're definitely looking at inkjet web, or for sure inkjet technology, digital printing. So we currently run toner-based equipment. So we're going to head to that inkjet summit in April, learn more about what are the markets and what is the cost of entry. And we've done some of the research on the equipment, but how do you sell it? Where are you gonna get revenue from? So we're heavily looking at that. Continue to grow in fulfillment and large format graphics. We're already doing that, but apparel. So I would encourage anyone that's not doing any of those ancillary services. I mean, it is 20 or 30,000 bucks to buy a large format banner printer. Most businesses need banners. So the cost of entry is not high to get into that fulfillment. Some racks and a little bit of software, and you can start charging by the month, by the piece, pick and pack. Do some of that. Customers, help them with their supply chain. So I would encourage anyone that's not doing those additional, kind of just being diversified, to start getting into it. We're looking for acquisition opportunities. I think that's a big part of our industry. Every time we see the reports come out, somebody's been acquired by somebody. They're tucking in the sales, selling off the equipment, and they're just trying to get that top line revenue. So I think everybody should be on the lookout for acquisitions that fit you and your core business, but maybe expand out a little bit, diversify you a little bit. And then I guess my biggest thing for the outlook is just aggressive selling and prospecting. That's my best advice. Our current customers, your current customers, and everybody's customers are going to be looking for ways to save money. None of us own our customers. So I think just being aggressive on sales, pushing. Don't think you have it in the bag. There's definitely a chance that you could lose it. So give your best service, turnaround time, quality, all kind of comes at it's almost expected to do all those things. What can you do different? You know, be their partner, be their solutions provider, and never think that you have them for life, because if you kind of got to treat them like you're always going to lose them. That's how we look at it anyways.
I think that outlook for 2025 and beyond, I think because it grows exponentially, the artificial intelligence side of things will be a major player moving forward. Design and automated layout services like Midjourney and DALL-E, I think will become, more used and should be taught, in a university level for any graphic design programs that college and universities offer. And I also think that eventually, like what we've seen in the food service industry, there may become a time when someone walks into your storefront and is greeted by a virtual assistant versus a person. There are already virtual assistants available online at most of our websites. What's the difference between that and talking to a screen that greets you when you walk in the door? I think those will all be things that future consumers and the younger generation will be interested in seeing.
Interesting. You're on that AI topic, so I'm going to ask Ryan, who's joined us, to talk a little bit about his comment on using automation for postal pre-sort decision making.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about the post office potentially removing the NDC discount, but we still have to make decisions on whether we, plant load or load everything local, or if we have enough weight to go NDC or SCF, or are we utilizing commingle? Are we direct shipping? All of these decisions that we're making, is anybody utilizing feeding in data into an AI system to analyze your work over time, and then your data department eventually doesn't have to make those decisions. It will make them for them.
I'll start off. So we are not doing that, but I would love to learn how to do that, because you're right, Ryan, there is a lot of decisions that are made. Should we enter it in the origin? Should we send it to co-mail? It takes a lot of time to analyze that data and say, what is the best way to do that? So I know my team is looking into it, and we will be very interested in that technology, because it's going to save time, and it'll do what's best for the customer based on probably what inputs you put in there. So if you can feed it some information, and then it does a bunch of work and then comes back out and says, this is what you should do with this. Part of it should be origin, part of it should go co-mail, and here's your best strategy and what your postage cost is going to be. I can see that being huge for postal, for the data departments that are running all those lists.
Thanks for making that easy, Justin, because I'd say ditto.
I see Ryan's question here about exploring robotics in production or AI. The latest thing that we've done is we have put in a Duplo machine that has barcode reading capability on it. So we can load into our Xerox Fiery software the barcodes and templates that Duplo provides. And so it doesn't matter, you can shuffle and mix up sheets of different jobs and load them all into the Duplo machine. And as it reads the barcode, it immediately adjusts and cuts creases and finishes automatically based off of the barcode, which makes you kind of wonder how in the world you ever had to keep track of anything before.
Excellent. Automation is certainly something we have to embrace for the future. Part of that relates to our workforce crisis and our baby boomers retiring and our young people getting into the market. There is a question from our attendees that asks about freight charges and surcharges, and if you've seen any of them starting to go down. Diesel was at its highest price at over $5 a gallon, and now it's just $3 a gallon. And maybe it could offset the cost of the tariffs. What do you see, and what should we expect to see in changes for freight?
We always notice there's a lag between our freight haulers and the cost of that we know is out in the market. So they're quicker to raise prices than they are to reduce prices. So we have to lean on them and leverage them to make sure that they're keeping up going both ways. So the answer to your question is yes, we are expecting and are already seeing some discounts on freight.
Excellent.
Same here. You know, I don't know, my understanding is that UPS and Amazon are kind of splitting ways. I don't know, maybe somebody knows more about the exact timing of that, but there's a lot of changes coming there too with the small package side of things with Amazon. I mean, the amount of trucks they have and the amount of infrastructure they're building, they clearly are wanting to do their own. In South Dakota, we don't have it. We have an Amazon warehouse in a different city, but we don't have Amazon trucks delivering anything yet. But we are seeing a reduction in freight costs a little bit. Mike nailed it, that it goes down a lot slower than it goes up. But there's a lot of uncertainty there too with, okay, well, how are they going to get these packages to the final destination in the rural areas and things like that? So then you go back to the USPS, I think is hanging their hat on hoping to increase the package volume to offset the regular mail. So there's just still so many more questions than answers.
Interesting.
Yeah, but
Any
it
other
is funny though that even though diesel's come down, they still have the fuel surcharge.
It's a revenue stream for them.
Correct.
All right. Well, with that, let's switch to our final topic, and then we're going to just build off it and keep talking. And, you know, I was going to say, Steve talked about his threats and opportunities and went through those. I'm going to throw it to the rest of the panel. You know, are there any other things that you feel in your region or just in your business segmentation that is a threat or an opportunity? You know, if you guys want to expand a little bit on that, that would be wonderful.
I would like to mention something. I seem to note that, you know, in the entire time I've been in the industry, customers seem to be requiring a lot faster turn of products. They are constantly reducing the amount of time they're giving us to produce a given order, large or small. You know, they're asking for things like, you know, 20-page booklets, 500 of them by tomorrow. And, you know, if we don't have enough raw materials on the floor to meet their specific request, we find it difficult to say, I would love to help you, but I don't have enough paper on the floor. The next thing that they move to immediately, being loyal customers, well, I'll go buy the paper and bring it to you, not realizing that it's not that easy to come up with 23 by 35 100-pound gloss text. So we see that there's a need there for some diligence in stocking what we need. But here again, we don't want to extend ourselves financially one direction when the customers are always the ones that make the decisions as to whether or not they're going to buy, when they're going to need it, how fast they want it, you know, versus what's needed. So I'd like to hear what the panelists think on that.
Patrick, can I throw it right back at you? Because we have the same issue. Can some of that be educating your customer with expectations or explaining processes to them, saying, you know, if you want a 20-page book, well, it's going to take us an hour to stitch it. It's going to do this, that, and I'm only staffed till, say, 5 o'clock. Does your sales staff, do they have the ability to do that?
Yes, our sales staff does, and our sales staff endeavors. The latest one was this week. A customer called wanting a booklet by, you know, today because she's flying out on Thursday, but she hit us with the order yesterday. So here again, that's the question. You know, these are not new customers. They're not new to the purchasing of printed material. They do it on a regular basis. But we seem to be feeling more pressure placed on us from the consumer. And it goes back to one of the things that was mentioned earlier. customer confidence or consumer confidence seems to be high right now, very strong. But the reason why our business confidence seems low is because customers and consumers are wanting items in timelines that are not always feasible. So while they feel that they have the strength and the power to request something or to receive something, we feel that our confidence is low because we're not always able to, just because it takes time. It's the the drive-through mentality, like what Steve mentioned before. If we can, we will, but it doesn't mean that we always can. And so it kind of leaves everyone in turmoil, us, and then ultimately the consumer.
I think we can, so instant gratification is to blame for, well, I guess I'm going to blame Amazon and Walmart and some of the big companies that, you can literally, in the bigger cities, you can get stuff, you can order something on Amazon and they will deliver it within 2 to 4 hours. Walmart, they'll do, they'll deliver it right to your front door. So consumers are getting trained, right? They are getting that type of service from people, but we're manufacturing a custom-made product. So, if we went out and bought enough equipment, my brother kind of has a saying that, if you build a church for Easter, you'd have a church that was 3 times bigger than it needed to be the rrest of the year. So if we went out and bought equipment to do this, we would all be broke, right? If you had 10 digital presses with automated finishing, we could all then do books, but then we don't have that flow of work all the time. So that we find the same thing, the same challenges, but yeah, educating your customer, managing expectations, trying to help them plan and say, hey, to realistically get these types of jobs done, here's what we need from you. They don't like to hear that all the time, but it's the reality of it. But some of the other opportunities, I'm a pretty optimistic guy. So, we just installed, it's just up and running now, a new, not brand new, but new to us, heat set web press. We put in a 5-color Komori sheet fed that was also used, but new to us. So I've been being told by people outside the industry that printing's going away for the last 20 years of my career. And here we are installing newer, faster, more automated equipment. So I feel confident about the market, but also, just that cautiously optimistic part of it. I would say that the education market, that was a great idea a number of years ago to give every kid in 3rd grade a iPad or a Chromebook to learn on. And then the teachers quickly decided that that was not the best way for these youngsters to learn. So we're seeing an increase in textbooks and different printing like that. And then within the education market, Texas wants to do something different than California. And even within certain states, there's different school districts that want different content. So then there's more versions and things like that. So we're finding opportunities there. The threat side of things is, skilled operators. So we're doing what I would call cobotics. So we put in a new stitching machine that had bundle loaders, a crane that helped load the machine, more stackers. So what used to take 4 or 5 people to run now takes 3 people to run. So some of those types of things that are not fully robotics, I saw that question that Ryan had about in production, are people using robotics? I wouldn't say that we're using full robotics, but we're using robotic equipment, which I think a lot of people are probably doing, but it's just something you have to invest in and look at the long-term ROI of that to reduce staff and to reallocate staff and try to just be as efficient and automated as you can and still be able to make the payment on that type of equipment. So certainly the online part of the bit, just people not stopping printing and saying, well, we're just going to go online and do email campaigns. It's like, well, how many emails do you guys open that you get out of the 100 that you get a day and buy something? It's not the only way to do marketing. So try to encourage people to still send a print piece and tie it in with their online marketing, kind of coordinate all those things together. So yeah, I'm optimistic about the future, but the threats seem to keep coming, and we all kind of share in them. They're all the same for all of us. So the more we can share what everybody's doing to try to hedge those off, the better off we're going to be as an industry.
Yeah, you touched on it well, Justin. And if you put a full-fledged marketing campaign together, as opposed to just an email campaign or a postal or a postcard or a flat or something, typically they've now started to see that that's actually creating better returns on investment than just something they get electronically. So luckily, some of that is reverting back to where it used to be. Not enough, but some of it is. In terms of this slide and threats and opportunities, the one thing that we have and we're trying to fix is a weakness in the fact that we are losing skilled operators. The average age of our production is higher than I would like, and we are trying to get in new talent, but it's hard. And let's face it, whether we like to admit it or not, what we do in our industry isn't sexy. And they're not teaching college kids to come join a printer. And so the best success we have is getting people in the door to see what we do. I mentioned it earlier, that magic on paper. When they see that we're taking a big sheet of paper or a big roll of paper and what's coming off the other end of that press or out of our finishing department, again, I love that when I give tours, their eyes go like this. And so we're really trying to get into high schools and even some colleges, because not everyone is going to college. Not everyone is, there still are blue collar workers out there, and we have to embrace what's available and train them. So that's a weakness in the commercial print market, in my opinion.
I agree wholeheartedly. I want to cycle back to what you said, Mike, about losing talent. I call it brain drain. That I hate to see these talented craftsmen walk out of our building to retirement. Does anybody on the panel have a way of getting like a training program set up, or ideas of how to capture some of that brain drain before they walk out? I look back, we had a guy who was one of the best folders around town, and this guy could troubleshoot the machine. He maintained it, and he walked out of the building and we lost that.
I would say, so we call that institutional knowledge. So they've just been here, they've done that, they've been really good at it, they've skinned their knees and done all the things along all those years that they got that machine dialed in. And so what we've tried to start doing is videoing some of the setups and some of the challenging jobs that take more than just, keep running it and adjust this little thing, and it's fine. Like the more complicated type setups is we're actually trying to video and catalog those so that it's like saved. So somebody new can have it on their phone or an iPad out on the machine and be like, okay, this is what they did when they were having trouble with static, or when they were having trouble with this fourth and fifth knife in a stitcher and they couldn't quite get it set up right. It's like, have that videotaped. I say videotaped, listen to me, but videoed and saved and easy to access and catalog so that it's like easy to search and you can find it. But that's one thing that has definitely been helpful, is having some just long lasting videos of what the challenging parts of the job are. So that's one idea.
Yeah, the best thing, or the only thing we've been able to do is some of the retirees like to have a little pocket money, and they'll come in and work part-time in the busy season, and they can kind of backstop some of the less skilled people.
Has anybody tried bringing back a retiree, to your point, Steve, to train?
I've been down on one knee asking them to come back, and just doesn't work. Not full time anyway.
Sure.
We've had a few that retired. We had the retirement party, had the cake, had everybody in the room. All right, see you later. And about a week later, they're back in because they got bored right away and they wanted to make some pocket change. And so what happens is they get to have the full autonomy of their schedule. It's like, hey, I'll work this week, but I'm going hunting next week, so I'm out. And then they also have other income that they can't be over or whatever. So we just let them have full flexibility, and we knock a couple bucks up on their pay to make it worth their time to come in, and then try to focus on them helping somebody that is newer and needs to be trained. So I think right what you're saying, Ken, is you get the pieces of their institutional knowledge to help us without them having to stay committed to 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week.
There are a couple of comments in the Q&A from our attendees, one saying that they use high school interns and maybe pairing them with some of the tenured or the retirees is an idea. Another comment about needing a new set of tools for the younger generation to help them see that print can be sexy again, and considering mentor options with full flexibility. There's also a comment about hiring and sales, and that sales is a difficult position to bring on new people to be successful. Thoughts there?
Yeah, those are great suggestions, and we do embrace those ideas plus other things. We have put in formal apprenticeship programs, and we used to, if someone was retiring, we'd put our backfill in, and then usually the timing was they'd come in as the other person's already leaving. Now we do it, we ask our team, hey, give us a few months notice when you're going to retire, which they do, fortunately. And then they get to work with that operator for 2 or 3 months. Even though it kind of doubles the workload on that particular asset for those 2 or 3 months, it's still, the return on investment is huge because they do capture a lot of that institutional knowledge.
Excellent. There's a question about what's your average retention of your production staff?
For
Ours
us,
is good. Go ahead, Justin.
ours is good after 1 year. So if we
Yes.
can get them to 1 year, then it looks really, the numbers look really good, but it's that zero. I mean, we have a new payroll software that gives us a lot more information, kind of starts predicting if certain people are leaving on certain shifts with a certain supervisor or a certain machine. It'll like actually tell us like, hey, you have 5 more people that are in that same boat. They're trending towards that, possibly leaving or separating from the company. But I would say, yeah, it's if we can get them to a year, then we have a good chance at keeping them for a lot longer. But that first year, you really gotta take care of them. So trying to do things next.
In 2022 and 2023, what they called the Great Resignation, we did struggle. In fact, our retention rate was not as good as I'd like. However, and most recently, it's a lot better. And I think it's because, we've learned some lessons from that. We talked already about labor rates, so that helped a little bit. But also, you have to really work hard on your culture. And sometimes we lose sight of that.
Excellent. There are some thoughts in the chat about anybody succeeding in trying to upcharge for expedited turnaround times. We used to have kind of this category called quick printers, and they were the ones that would do the small quantity, only certain selection of paper. And now everything seems to be you can get whatever you want whenever you want it. What are your thoughts?
Many of our customers, when they ask for an expedited service, they don't even ask for a quote for that product. They recognize automatically that it's going to cost more, but they really don't seem to even finance or, cost material and product doesn't seem to even enter into the conversation. They trust that we're going to be honest and judicious and fair based off the products that we've always provided them. So they're good with, the order once it's complete, and they just pay the bill once they receive the product.
We have not had good luck with rush fees or any of that kind of stuff. But I completely agree with Patrick that if it's a last minute job and they just want to get the job done, you can kind of quote it with that under consideration, but we don't put a separate line item that says rush fee, 25% surcharge or anything like that. It was a harder battle to fight explaining that than it was worth trying to do. We have tried to do it before, but we handle it very similar to Patrick, where it's just like we quote the job with that in mind and send the bill. And if there's a discrepancy, we talk about it after the fact without gouging. We're not, he said it, you want to still be fair and reasonable.
Plus, when you're doing something like that, you don't want to give it away. because the next time, for a larger project,
Mhm.
they'll expect the same turn time for say double or triple the amount, and then you're just taxing yourself trying to get it completed. So it does pay to, be judicious and figure out a fair price, but just say, I'm going to have to charge you a little bit more because of the turn time, a normal term time on something like this. So if you explain the process, I think you get a chance to make a little money and set the bar, so to speak.
Absolutely correct.
Well, Teresa, do we have any other comments or questions out there?
We don't, but this is typically the time where we open it up for any questions or comments related to anything that was covered or not covered. So if our attendees do have additional questions, feel free to type those in the chat or the Q&A. And I'd ask the same of our panelists. Are there other things that you want to share that we maybe didn't get to spend as much time on?
I'm going to call it, do you have a burr under your saddle? Is there something out there that's really, bugging you?
I have one that I'd like to ask the group or whatever, but is anybody seeing a trend on credit applications of poor looking credit, and are you taking chances or are you not taking chances when it comes to, you do your credit check, you run it through your Dun & Bradstreets, and then it comes back and your accounting guy says 50% down or 100% down, and now you switch back to the sales side and you're saying, we want to get this job. Obviously, we don't want to get anything that we're not going to get paid for, but are you taking more chances to try to fill the sales funnel, or is it like, nope, if it doesn't have this level of credit, we're not doing it?
So my response to that, Justin, is that we are very risk averse. So we don't really budge on that. And I also coach our sales reps in that if all of a sudden somebody's come to them with this great opportunity, there might be a reason why. And
Right.
so we vet that out too.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yep, Justin, we do credit checks, and if they look like they don't have the best credit, we'll ask, say, on the first project, we're going to ask either cash on delivery, or we're going to ask half down, half on delivery, and just say that's going to build up the credit. Your next order will offer you credit, and have it conservative, like to Mike's point. Don't give away the farm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't get three months into it and they haven't paid their first bill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Something I'll add too, that as far as workforce goes, where we're struggling anyway, in this industry is finding people willing to come to work, instead of work from home. And that's just we've lost several, you take them through the whole hiring process and interviews and all that. And you tell them up front, look, this is on site. You're not from the industry. You're surrounding yourself here with, 40 plus years of industry knowledge that's going to help you grow, help you be better at what you do. So you've got to be on site, and you get to the point where you make the offer and they sleep on it and decide, nah, I'm going to go work from home. I want to try to work from home. Well, you can't do that. You're not going to be successful in this industry if you don't have that knowledge surrounding you. But that's where our biggest struggle is right now, is especially just in customer service. All your production guys have to be there because they can't produce if they're not there. But customer service it's been a struggle for us to find somebody willing to come on site every day.
Yeah, we get that out there right away, and it's repeated many times so that in the end it doesn't become a surprise. Yeah, we're a manufacturing facility. It's a remote position just does not work. So.
I've had to be more flexible than I would like to be, if I'm being honest. We have a handful of people that are working from home. Obviously not production positions, but yeah, there's definitely even people that do work from the office. They really want the flexibility to be able to work from home once in a while. And like I said, we've been more flexible than I would like to be. One thing that we're working on is an actual work from home policy. We don't have one that's in our handbook or anything. So I think you need to set the parameters of what that is, because you get the people are, oh, I'm going to work from home today. I got a sick kid. It's like, well, are you really working from home, or are you just not taking PTO or not taking time off? And, so it's a challenge, Tim. I agree with you there. And we see the government, they're pushing everybody to come back to the office and things like that. But yeah, COVID really threw us for a loop on that, because it let everybody do it without any question for a period of time. And then all of a sudden it's like pulling teeth to try to get it back to what it used to be. So,
Well, and we're really flexible here with our, I'm gonna call them seasoned employees, the guys that have been, guys and gals that have been here for a while, and they know what they're doing. Look, you need to work from home today because you're caring for a sick parent or child, and we trust you. You know what you're doing. You understand our products and processes and all that. But it's just with new hires, you go and look, and we've tried to explain to them. We tell them up front several times, and it's in the job description. It is on site, and we explained to them, look, you could get to a point once you are trained and confident in what you're doing that we could be flexible in the work from home, 1 day a week or 1 day a month or whatever that looks like, or as needed if they're trying to need to take care of some stuff or take care of a loved one or a sick one. But boy, it's just getting them in here to get them trained is the difficulty right now. I think we're all facing it.
I wanted to speak on the same subject, but a little bit of a different take. At the beginning of the pandemic, when everyone started working remotely, we saw some adjustments in order frequency from some of our customers. Once they started working remotely, it seemed like they were not working all the time. And so we saw some order quantity adjustments because of that. Now that most everyone in my area wants to return to the office and, at their different jobs, we've seen order frequency has picked back up because now they're in their office, they know what they need, they order what they need, instead of trying to limit what their inventory would be from their home office, which I think overall will help our industry in the years to come as everyone gets used to being back into a professional environment.
I would ask the group, do you feel like it's going to hurt our industry in the long run? And I'll use the example of when I started in my career, I did not have the option to work from home. And man, I learned so much, and I wouldn't have the knowledge that I have today had I not been in the office every day. So do you think it's going to delay our society, delay our industry, delay our growth opportunities?
I think that's something we've got to compete against, that you'll face every time. Tim touched on it, where they go through the entire process and then say, no, I'd rather work from home.
Yeah, I think they lose the advantage of like I said, when you got so much intellectual property around you with coworkers, and you're not able to take advantage of that when you're working from home. Yeah, you could shoot a quick email, you could pick up the phone and call, but that doesn't take the place of the efficiency of being in an office, spinning around while you have the customer on the phone and saying, hey, they're asking about this. What should we do? And you've answered the customer more efficient. You've taken care of them quicker, and you've learned something along the way, where I think you lose if you work from home. Not to mention the social aspect. You're working from home. You're looking at a computer or a TV monitor or a camera all day. You lose that interaction and skill of actually working and dealing with people and reading body language and facial expressions and all that kind of stuff. So I think it'll hurt us down the road, but who knows? Maybe I'm just old.
I think it's got a lot to do with generational too. The younger generation wants to work from home more, I would say, than the other generations. But I see a hybrid. I see I guess if I'm making a prediction, which is all this is that some kind of a flexible format where it's 70-30, like 70% in the office and 30% flexible, because they really want that. It's very important to them. So if you don't do it, what are we going to have? So if you have a policy and you have a balance where it's still beneficial to the company, and you can have accountability for what they're doing from home. Because there's sometimes I get way more done when I'm not in the office. So I feel like I'm an example, like where it's like, if I can not get interrupted, I can get a lot more done, but I also could never do my job from being totally remote. So, and then you might be able to get better talent too, you know, from having somebody that's living in a different state or something that is really good at what they do, but they're not, for whatever reason, they don't want to relocate. It's like, you might be able to find different talent. So I think having an open mind to it, and then just doing what's best for your organization with some balance and some flexibility.
Justin, we
And
just hired an estimator that's working remote, pretty much full time. We asked them to come in once a month.
There you go.
We had to because of retirement.
But they were already trained, correct?
Correct. But we
Yeah,
did bring them in for a week to just go through our process.
Yeah.
But they were already, they had already worked on the software that we use. So,
And I think that's where you can't have a one size fits all for every position too, you know, certain
Yep.
positions. We have some graphic designers that work from home. It's like, we know if they're producing or not, because either you're getting your designs back that you're asking for or not. But a salesperson, I mean, yes, you can manage their sales funnel if they're making sales, but if they're trying to get to making their sales goal, it's like, were you folding laundry or were you making sales calls, you know? So,
Gentlemen, there's a comment in the Q&A related to competitors undercutting pricing and the feel that over the last 2 years, more competitors are willing to drop their price. How do you react to that? And do you drop your prices as well?
There's really not a set answer for that. It's situational. And I don't necessarily agree, so I'm not sure where that comment came from, what state or whatever. But fortunately, I think the printers in the Midwest are fair competitors, and we typically, I don't see people doing anything ridiculous. Once in a while, you see something and you realize that, okay, they must just want to keep their equipment running. And so it's a situational response, and we take every situation by that. Luckily, we have customers that if our salespeople have done what they're supposed to do, and that is forge relationships, the customer will stick with you and maybe mention it. And maybe there will be an occasion where you have to cut your price for whatever reason. But I don't like to give a set answer for that question.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of a dynamic pricing model where if we're slow, we're going to be more aggressive. But still, we're not a nonprofit.
Right.
We're in it to make money, you know.
Our response to most requests like that, if they've sought a competitor's price and they come back to us and say, are you willing to match the price? Many times, you know, first of all, it's a little bit unethical for, you know, someone to be, you know, asking if someone can match the price of someone else when they're geared completely different for the type of work. So what we typically will respond is, you know, we appreciate the opportunity, but evidently this company is geared better for this particular project. Please keep us in mind for your next project, because, you know, truth be told, some companies are geared differently than others. We may be less expensive on the next project versus this one.
Great point. Great point. We have a tool we call the budgeted hourly rate. So it's really more about educating the company on what your costs are and what you need to be able to sell it for, so that you're covering your cost at least. You're not a charity like Steve mentioned. So that's a good point.
Hey, Patrick, I wonder how many times do they kind of, you're in effect calling their bluff. How many times do they fold and give you the order anyway?
About 85% of the time.
Yeah. You know, it's like a negotiation series I went through a while back. They said, if you don't flinch on the first price, you're getting screwed. It's free? You're not paying me to take it?
That's a great point. That there's another question related specifically to that. Do you still negotiate pricing? They feel like there's not been a lot of negotiation for the last 4 years.
My short answer to that is yes, but with altered specs. You know, so if they say, hey, we can't afford this, or we found a cheaper price, like, hey, I can change this to a 35-pound SCA plus and I can save you money, or change the size a little bit, go to a different size, less pounds of paper, less, you know, pounds of stuff to ship, whatever it might be. So come back to them with an option to try to save them, get within their budget. But, you know, as far as matching prices or lowering prices, I mean, a couple percent, we're not going to lose the job over that. But we've had ones like Mike said, they said, oh, well, we can get it for half the price you're doing it for. It's like, there's not that much margin in this business. So they're definitely losing money to fill up a shift or keep the lights on type of thing. That is not a long-term strategy. So call us when that doesn't work out type of thing, without being a smart mouth about it.
Right.
Very nicely said, of course.
Excellent information. This is a great group. Ken, we are at the top of the hour. Are there any last comments or considerations you'd like to add?
At this point, we covered a lot of information, but I hope that it was very useful to everybody on the call. I want to thank our panelists, and I want to thank Tim for jumping in as well. It was a good talk, and check on the websites for your local association. We meet every other month, and we'd love to have you on board for our next one.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Everybody have a great afternoon, and we will be in touch with the recording.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody's expertise on this. It was good.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.